Hey there everyone, hope you all have been staying safe and welcome back to another look between the lines. Today in the news, there's been a lot of talk about the ongoing electric controversies, coronavirus is still having its toll, and there's a lot that's coming up with the pending court cases with the election. So, let's go ahead and get into this. We've covered this a little bit, but ever since the election night, and even far before that, President Trump has made a lot of claims about widespread fraud, especially involving voter mail-in ballots in Democratic cities and Democratic states. And cries of election conspiracies are not anything new. We've seen that in the past few presidential elections, however, this is the first time where one is taking it quite so far. There is so much ongoing litigation in so many states, and such a widespread movement to try and make this happen, that it's much more divisive and something that really needs to be addressed. The election is a big deal, and winning the presidential race is a big deal, but there is a worldwide crisis that's going on right now that should probably at least get some attention or care in trying to fix. If President Trump really did want to, as his own words, make America great again, why is he barring Biden's and his team from being able to get in on the coronavirus briefings and to try and be able to help? What harm would that do, and what good does it do to not concede even an inch for the fear that it will give a victory to the other side? That sort of divisive thinking is something that's really toxic in our world today, and it's something that should be discouraged, but instead, it might be rewarded if the legal battles go through, but that's something that only the courts can see. However, it's not looking very likely for President Trump to maintain a second term, especially given that the magnitude that President-elect Joe Biden has won by. And this is something I've said before. Either this is the most widespread conspiracy theory when it comes to election fraud that we've ever seen in the United States, or it's just detracting from the fact that Donald Trump lost and he doesn't want to lose. Many members of his own party are starting to turn against him, as recently Georgia's Republican governor even says that he's willing to certify Biden's electoral votes from Georgia. And that's just one example of many who are turning against Donald Trump and turning against the party that he represents, or at least what he's trying to turn the party into. Now, none of this is stopping President Trump or his champion, Rudy Giuliani, from continuing their investigations. Rudy Giuliani has appeared in many different speeches and meetings and interviews talking about the evidence that he's had and what he's going to keep on pushing forward. Now, as to what this evidence is other than hearsay or anecdotal evidence of what statistics should or could be, well, that's something we've yet to see. So this is based off of people's opinions and based off of what they think should happen by what they're seeing as opposed to what they actually have to provide as proof. And that frankly sounds a little far-fetched to be willing to put the entire country's security at risk for the transition of a presidential seat, but that is where we are. It is starting to turn into an all-or-nothing gambit by Trump and his supporters, and let's take a step back and ponder as to why this can be. President Trump was a widely successful man. In our ex-president Barack Obama's own words, Donald Trump is the embodiment of the American dream. He's successful, free, proud of who he is, and for better or worse, that's something that you can look up to if you have ambitions in that regard. Just please don't take on that personality in the process. But in my opinion, for someone like that to be so desperate to hold on to the presidential seat, it isn't because he just really wants to be president, it's because of something else. And it might have to do with all the threats of pending litigation, censorship, and promises of punishment from the moment that he leaves office from several different media giants, political affiliates, and even private interest groups. And while yes, there needs to be consequences for actions, there needs to be accountability for words said, that doesn't mean that everyone's going to agree with that and willingly accept retribution. With public outcries not just to oust President Trump, but anyone that has supported him and backed him, and even recently there have been calls to decensor votes to look at who even voted for him, that's something that's a bit too far. We need to prevent fascism on every front. We need to make sure that there will never be a repeat of what happened in Germany in the early 1900s. And that is a scary thought, and it's something we absolutely need to prevent, but that's not going to be achieved by ostracizing an entire group of people and especially deeming them irredeemable. And even if this might be unpopular, it's just my personal opinion that one of the reasons Trump might be holding on to office is just to delay the inevitable of the punishment that's coming. And that's a good site to look into what could possibly happen with everyone else. If they feel cornered, if they feel trapped, and if they feel like there is no future if they don't win, then what can you expect except for the absolute worst from them? They have nothing left to lose at that point, and that's why it's important to take a step back and remember that everyone is human, even if they have extreme differences from you. Absolutely never support racism, sexism, bigotry of any kind, and we need to rise against fascism, but we have to do it through understanding people to make sure that they don't do it only behind the scenes or trying to avoid the ire that you or others could bring. We need to get this through education and compassion. In the forever immortal words of Dr. Martin Luther King, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And that's something that you can only really achieve by understanding anyone else. If they feel like they have no purpose in your life, if they feel like you are never going to see them as something worth acknowledging, well, then they will never try to appease you or your views in return. Some people are irredeemable, and arguably, some people have shown themselves to be as such. Only one outcome is guaranteed, and that's if you match their hatred with more hatred, which you know they are going to respond with in kind. Never be afraid to ask them why. Hear them out, and then you might be able to convince them after you show them that you're coming from a stance of being willing to listen instead of from a pedestal in which you judge. And I know that's easier said than done. You can see it on the news. You can see the desperate power grab. You can see that a global pandemic is coming second to a simple election that will only determine who holds office regardless of what's going to come after that. You can see that at least on one side there is no empathy. And empathy is something that's sorely needed right now if we're going to talk about the coronavirus. It's really ramping up this holiday season, which is something that's just tragic when this is a time we're supposed to be coming together. And it's not something the United States is used to. None of us are. No one is used to having to stay away from others. No one is used to having to wear masks or stay indoors. Most importantly, most of us aren't used to having to do this with such uncertainty about what our future is going to be and whether or not we're going to have a clear path of recovery because of what's going on at the highest office. The fact that this pandemic is becoming a bipartisan issue is something that's really scary because you are having health officials starting to step down. One example of this is in Missouri, where they had another health official, Amber Elliott, step down after people were sending her harassing messages and threats, and even including her family. And this is too far. People are taking politicized issues and they are taking it out on those that are just fighting to save lives. There can definitely be arguments made about politicians and which side's going to be good or bad, but one thing is certain. Healthcare officials are dealing with this directly. The hospitals get filled and they have to move nurses into positions they're not used to. When they're having to open up beds, when they're having to change everything they're used to doing, extended shifts and pushing themselves to the limit for people, that's not the enemy. That's not ever something that we should consider the enemy. But that's because of politics, how this has gone. Because on a political issue, people are considering death something that can be neglectful. People are considering the possibility of a pandemic something that can be pushed aside. That even does not compare to taking it so far as to want to attack those on the other end of that. And then even worse, to attack those that are just trying to help. And though it's just one state, Missouri has had multiple healthcare officials step down. And they're not burnt out, they're getting chased out. And why is that happening? As always, we need to step back and see, why is it worth it? And that goes back to the original question with President Trump. Why is it worth locking out Joe Biden and his team from even being part of the hearings? Why is it worth it to keep them away from all information just for a bit of power? And why is it worth risking people to pay the ultimate price just so you can have a reward of another term in office or whatever they're trying to gain from this? It's a scary precedent. And it's something we need to think about. If we go into this holiday season, all I can say is, everyone, please stay safe, stay informed, but most importantly, while you're staying safe, have what fun with your family you can. Even if it's just a video call with those you can't travel to visit, even if it's just reaching out with a phone call to someone that can't get to a computer. No matter what goes on, don't forget your loved ones and don't forget the time that you still have with those that you still have. That's the real purpose of this season, and that's what we should all be focusing on as we try and brace for whatever's to come. But let us know in the comments, what do you think about all this? What is President Trump's real goal with all of this? What does he have to gain? Do you think it's because of everything that's been threatened against him or what's going to come after he finally loses office? Or is it something else? We'd love to know, so share your thoughts. And other than that, please remember to hit that like button. I know this was a somber topic, but we really take time to look into what we're talking about, and we'd love to keep on sharing it, and that really helps just support our channel as we move forward. And please hit that subscribe button so you know when we're coming out with new content, and until that comes, stay safe everyone, and thank you for joining us for another look between the lines.